Well everyone, it's time for us to go and take a look at the PlayStation 5 and see how this specific device and this gaming console holds up in 2023. Now, I will definitely tell you this console is still worth buying. It was a very good console when it first came out, and it's been a couple of years, and what's so funny is that personally for me, I remember buying this, and I say this in every video, so you guys are probably bored of hearing about it, but I remember buying this console in 2020, taking it back home, and I remember opening it up, and I was like, wow, after using it for a little bit of time, I am pretty sure that for the most part, the last generation of consoles, the Xbox One and the PS4s, are going to be lasting way longer than I initially thought. And I saw this because of the amount of similarity, I would say, between the PS4 Pro and the PS5. The UI and everything is completely different. The gaming consoles look different, but there is still a lot of overlap, and the original consoles are still very, very powerful, the PS4 Pro in particular, that I still think those things are going to be lasting way longer. And when you couple that with the, very few PlayStation 5s that sold to actual human beings rather than bots who actually sold them off to other people and, scalped them, well then now there's been big changes on that too. So I'm really happy to make this video because not only can people go ahead and buy PlayStation 5s pretty much on the spot. So if you want to buy them online, you can basically get them without having to worry about delays or anything like that. But that has also brought down the used prices of these PlayStation 5s quite a bit as well. And now I think we're going to be in a spot where we're going to start seeing a massive development for original titles and exclusives to these newer consoles, rather than maybe both consoles getting them. I mean, I hope both consoles get them, that'd be great. But I do think, the next big generation of games will probably end up coming out very soon, hopefully in the next 2 years. And then that'll make people probably want to buy a PS5 more so than like a PS4 Pro. Now, the starting price of these PlayStation 5s were a little bit different because Sony did release two different consoles. So they did release the PlayStation 5 disc, and they released the digital one as well. So in my case, I've owned both the digital and the disc. I own the disc right now, and I can definitely tell you, in my opinion, having the disc model is a way better option than having the digital one. Now, of course, that's easy to say because the disc one is more expensive, and if you can afford it, go for it. But I do think there's some room to say that if you want to get the disc one, it might make financial sense over time, especially if you already have a large library of either used PS5 games or used games that you've had on previous consoles, since this thing is somewhat backwards compatible. And you can go ahead and basically use those consoles and basically play those older games, and you can buy used PlayStation 5 games in the future and also plug them into your specific PlayStation 5. If you can save $20 a game, dude, within like 5 games you've already made your money back. And then over time, I mean, that'll definitely add up. But a lot of games are digital as well, so there's not really a big reason to go for only the disc one if you don't really need it. I personally do think that the digital one looks way better as well, but beyond that, it's not really a big deal in my opinion. Now, with the design of the PlayStation 5, I still think this thing looks beautiful, and I think it is a very good looking console for sure. So I don't know what the best way to describe it is. I've heard some people say it looks like a building. I kind of feel like it looks more like some sort of fish to me. Like, I don't even know how to describe it, but it is a very good looking console. And as soon as PlayStation, Sony released it and revealed it, I was so happy about it because it looked so much better than I would say their previous consoles for sure. Now, with the port selection on the front, one thing that I did like about the PlayStation 5 that I still think has held up very well is actually in particular with its specific port selection on the front. So when Sony made their console, I was very happy because they did end up putting a USB-C port on the front of this console. Now, would it have been better if they just dropped another port or something? Like maybe, I've heard some people say something like that, but having at least one USB-C port on their newly released console, personally for me, makes this console a little bit more future-proofed. It was something that the previous console did not have, and I was really happy that, Sony went down in that direction of releasing this console because that made way more sense to me in that perspective. But not to be, super competitive, but with the, Microsoft Xbox Series X and their Series S, they actually didn't have a USB-C port on their console. They had it on the controller, which was okay, but they didn't have it on the console, which was actually kind of sad. I feel like Microsoft should have dropped some sort of port on the front of this console that was a USB-C port. They did not do that, and Sony was able to do it, and that made me so happy. Having that type of capability was amazing, and that in and of itself was such a cool thing. They also gave us another USB-A port on the front of this console too, which was another really cool thing. So we have two different ports that we can select from the front of this console, and that in and of itself was amazing. Now on the back, we do have our standard, little bag where we can go and kind of see the fan grills around this console and everything. So it's kind of a cool design. It kind of cleans out this console and cools it down a little bit better. We also have another USB port on the back of this console. We have an Ethernet port, we have our HDMI port, and then we have our AC adapter as well. And with this type of console, I mean, that is definitely for me personally a lot of ports to have. It's, you know, if I'm using this type of console, I'd be totally okay with the amount of ports within it. Is it perfect? I mean, no, not really, but it has a good amount of ports, and again, with that USB-C port, it really did future-proof this console. I know it sounds kind of corny or whatever, and I've said it a lot, but that is a big difference coming from the Xboxes, I would say, and I'm really hoping Microsoft, on their next revision, hopefully not their main next one that we have to wait 4 years for, but the main, like the little like refresh they do, like the 1S, 1X, I'm hoping they do end up bringing a USB-C port on the console because it definitely needs it. So, in terms of that kind of covers it up on the outside. Now, another big thing, I mean, we all know about the games that are kind of available for this console, so there's going to be more games coming out. I do think one of the last games we're going to be getting for this console, maybe not the last one, but one of the big ones is going to be GTA 6. I think we all know this by now. I don't know when that's going to be coming out, probably in the next 2-3 years. It'll be announced probably like 2 years from now and then released maybe 3 years, I don't know. But I do think that's going to come right in time when Sony may end up releasing another revision of the PlayStation 5. So maybe the PlayStation 5 Slim will actually end up coming out hopefully within the next 2 years. With Sony's already kind of mapped out exactly when they're going to be releasing or announcing their PlayStation 6. And I think it was 2026 or beyond. It was like something like that, or 2028. So we are still years and years away from that happening. And I do think it's been delayed. If I'm being completely honest, I do think with the way the console was being sold early on, with it not selling properly and all that, and people buying them and reselling them, that caused, I would say, a lot more issues than it should have. And that is probably going to cause some issues in the future for this type of console as well, with its direct successor. I mean, if people are still having a hard time picking it up, they're not going to go and make the next one because people are they're still buying them and they're still sold out everywhere. Now, another thing that I actually did like a lot from Sony was that they gave the PlayStation 5 disc and the digital model the same exact type of hardware for the most part. Besides that disc tray, basically the digital one was cheaper, but it was giving you the same exact power as that disc model. The thing with the Series S and the Series X, the S is clearly less powerful, but the X, you know, it's still fairly similar for the most part. But the thing I liked about Sony here was that they did actually give it the same amount of power. So that makes it a little bit easier, I would say, for game developers. If they want to go ahead and make a game for the PlayStation 5, well, they can make it for the disc and the digital because it's going to be the same exact game pretty much, and they have the same exact power. So they don't really have to think about it like that. With the Xboxes, I think it's a little bit of a different story. It's not the end of the world, but that is kind of another advantage, I would say, for something like the PlayStation 5, albeit they are more expensive than the Series S, so keep that in mind as well. And that PlayStation 5 controller is also one of my favorite controllers still. I use it anytime I play my PlayStation 5, but I also play anytime I play any games on my PC. It is my go-to controller. I like it a lot, and definitely that's one of those things I'm going to continue doing, is pretty much just continue to go and use that controller as often as I can. So to kind of sum up this video, what I'll definitely tell you is, I definitely do think clearly the PlayStation 5 is still worth buying. It's a great console, has a ton of power. It's not perfect, but I do think Sony did a really good job with this console at that time, and I do think it's held up very, very well throughout the last couple of years. I'm hoping it lasts like another 4 years, and then, you know, with a revision, hopefully next year, we'll see what happens. But in terms of that kind of covers it up there. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More important than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.